Welcome everyone to this seminar where we're going to talk about land identity and power. My name is Peter Karlsson Sjögren. I'm the Executive Director at Life and Peace Institute. And I'm very happy to see all of you here tonight. We have a very extinguished panel as well as a moderator. And we are so pleased to be able to share this with you, the discussion, the introduction, and also the questions at the end. Because LPI is at this moment celebrating 30 years. And in Congo we've been for more than half of that time, 15 years out of the 30. So Congo and DRC has a very special place in our heart, as well as the possibilities to change for the future. And we're going to hear more about that tonight. So once again, welcome all of you. And I would like to start to introduce Anders Sjögren, who will be moderating the seminar tonight. Anders is a senior researcher at the Nordic Africa Institute and is also acting leader at a research cluster on conflict, security and demographic transformation here in Uppsala.
Democratic.
His recent work has been on land conflict and citizenship in Kenya and in Uganda. He also holds a PhD in political science from the Stockholm University. I'm very happy that you have taken on this task, Anders, and thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much, Peter. Good evening. Also very happy to see so many of you here. What I will do now is to introduce our distinguished panel of speakers and just say a few words on what's going to happen here tonight. Very few words because we are all eagerly waiting to hear the speeches. Now, a distinguished panel indeed. To my immediate left here is Stina Högbladh, who will be the first speaker. Stina is the project leader of the Uppsala Conflict Data Program at the Department of Peace and Conflict Research. Stina has followed the conflicts in the Great Lakes regions for this program since 2002, with a special interest in the DRC. She has regularly lectured on the different conflicts in the country and the surrounding region, focusing on how conflicts on the regional, national and local level are interrelated. Stina, welcome. And a round of applause, I think. It's not just great. And to the left of Stina is Koen Vlassenroot. Most of you who are familiar with, have followed the Congo, would perhaps tell me that you need no introduction. Koen will need no introduction. He's a professor of political science and the director of the conflict research group at Ghent University, Belgium. Koen specializes in issues of governance, armed groups, citizenship and land issues in the Great Lakes region. He has provided an important contribution, and I can confidently say that as his academic colleague, to the scholarly debate around hybrid governance and public authority. Since 2011, he's a lead researcher of the Justice and Security Research Program. It's a DFID-funded consortium led by the London School of Economics. Koen is a member of the Congo Affinity Group. It's a small, high-level network of international experts on the DRC that advises the United Nations and other international organizations. Please welcome Koen Vlassenroot. And to the further left of Koen is Loochi Muzaliwa. Loochi is a Congolese journalist and human rights activist. Loochi has worked for several media houses with a special focus on the province of South Kivu. He has been committed with the organization called Justice for All, fighting for the respect of the rights of the common people in DR Congo. In 2008, Loochi joined the Life and Peace Institute and its Congolese conflict transformation program, where he is now the program coordinator. Please welcome Loochi. And not least important, to the left of Loochi is Charlotte Booth, acting program director of LPI. Charlotte will act as the translator. Loochi will prefer to speak in French, and Charlotte will translate into English. Okay, a round of applause for Charlotte as well, I think. Yes, thank you. You're warming up. Okay, we'll proceed like this. Stina will start. She will talk for about 10 minutes, right? On you can introduce your own topic, sure. And then it will be Koen will speak for around 20 minutes or so, yeah. And then Loochi has been given 25 minutes, and then after that, we have been allocated half an hour for a panel discussion where I will pose some questions, but you will ask each other questions too, I'm sure, and we interact. After which there will be a question and answer session involving you people in the audience. And at around 8:30, we will close shop for tonight. Okay. But please first, Stina, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I think I have the toughest task because I'm supposed to try to summarize and give an overview over the Congolese conflicts to you in 10 minutes. And that's nearly impossible. But since I'm in the data business, I will start by giving you this graph. It's a graph over yearly fatality estimates in violent conflicts in Congo. So, and it's collected by the Uppsala Conflict Data Program. And here, what you can see here is these different conflicts, but it's underneath the graph. And you can see that the most people died in conflict in Congo in 96-97. And that was when Laurent Kabila, the father Kabila, ousted Mobutu from power. At the same time as Rwanda and the AFDL forces was killing a lot of Hutu civilians and other civilians in the country. So that is the main peak in this graph. After that, between 98 up till 2000, the beginning of 2000s, we have the Great African War, it's sometimes called. It's when Zimbabwe and a lot of countries from the African region were in Congo fighting. And there you can see still a lot of dead, but it's at least declining from the peak year. The next little peak after 2001, that is the Ituri conflict, the Ituri war, when Hema and Lendu ethnic groups fought each other in the Ituri region. After that, we had a number of peace agreements, both in Ituri. We had a peacekeeping operation coming in. We had the final agreement and elections. And during this time, even though it was much violence in the country, it was on a lower level. But then it escalated again with a new group coming, supported by Rwanda, the CNDP, in 2008 and 2009. And this was a period also when Rwanda, together with Congo, was fighting a Rwandan rebel group called FDLR. So it was again a lot of civilians that were killed, and again a little peak in this diagram. The violence then went down, as you can see, in 2011 when it was new elections, but then we had a new peak with the M23 violence after that. And then we are where we are today. So in this diagram, you can see that Congo has had a lot of violence if you compare to other regions and other countries of the world, but that it is declining, but it's still on a high level. I wanted to go on to, Wait. We'll see. I wanted to show you a map, but then it sort of disappeared. Wait. No. It doesn't want to show the map. It is there. I wanted to click on the map, but maybe that's not there, because then you see it better. So here is the map of the violence last year and in the beginning of this year. I don't know how much you know about Congo, but most violence occurs in the eastern part of the country. And here it's a myriad of rebel groups active. And still active, even though you could see the decline, it's still a myriad of rebel groups active. And they both come from other neighboring countries, such as Rwanda, Uganda, and Burundi. But there is also national groups and local groups that fight each other at the same time. So last year, the government and the peacekeeping operations. Peacekeeping operation was mainly fighting in the beginning of the year ADF in Bunia, around that area. And then later in the year they were going on to fight FNL, which is a Burundian rebel group near Uvira. And then in the beginning of this year, it has started to fight a Rwandan rebel group called FDLR in South and North Kivu. And my point in telling you this is that we will go on to talk about the local conflicts later on. But to understand the local conflicts, you have to understand that the local conflicts are interrelated together or related to all these regional, what happens in the region. You also have all these national rebel groups that are active in the country still. It's smaller groups, such as the APCLS, FRPI, and the Katakatanga in the Katangan region. So you also have national groups fighting the government. And then you have ethnic conflicts as well that is entangled into this. So it's all intermixed or interrelated. I sort of lost the thread here when I couldn't find the map, but okay. I hope that you can understand the broad picture, that it's all mixed. It's a lot of rebel groups, it's a lot of violence in here. Right now in January it was a lot of protests in Kinshasa, that is here in the west, because it will be election, or they are hopefully going to have elections next year, or at the end of this year they are going to have the first elections. And then people were protesting because Kabila, the current president, said that they were going to have a census counting all the people before they were going to hold these elections. And people thought that that was a way of prolonging, like, for him to remain in office. So it was a lot of violence there as well. And I was just supposed to say something about the elections, and you can't really say that much yet, because we don't know if there will be any. But there has come out a timetable for when the elections will be held. The problem is that it's quite tight. So if this holds, the first part of the elections will be held the 25th of October. And that's quite soon. And the budget is also, the Congolese budget is also smaller than what the elections will cost. So it demands a lot of donor money, and we don't know if the donor will give these resources if they don't know if the elections will be free and fair. And that was my really short, tight overview over this country and the violence there. And if you have questions later on, we can go into details then. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Stina. Now we'll turn to Koen. Do you want to stand up? Yeah? That's fine. Watch it spin. Look at mine. It's sort of... put it on. Yeah, she's right here to help us.
We discussed what Life and Peace Institute was planning to do in Congo, and I also had the opportunity to visit their program at several occasions. That's the reason why I know Loochi so well. I was asked today to talk about land issues, which has been recognized as one of the key sources of conflict. How does land relate to conflict? How should we deal with this conflict trigger? I'll also give a few comments on current approaches, on current programs that try to cut the link between land issues and conflict. And at the end, I will provide a number of ideas on what should be done. But before doing so, we need to acknowledge that land issues came to be considered as key drivers of conflict in Eastern DRC quite recently. It was particularly after the start of the M23 rebellion a few years ago that there was renewed attention by policymakers for what are considered as root causes of conflict in Eastern DRC. Before that M23 crisis, these root causes, these local root causes, were mostly neglected. But as a result of this growing attention to the problematic access to land, this problematic access to land is increasingly recognized as a key driver and a sustaining factor of conflict in the east of DRC. Scholars, researchers, practitioners today have identified a number of critical land-related factors that contribute to violence and conflict, including many different types of land governance mechanisms, the existence of different legal frameworks, the weaknesses of land law, competition between indigenous and migrant communities, mainly from Rwandan descent, the Banyarwanda and Banyamulenge, limited access to arable land in demographically dense areas, weak performance of the administration, and more in particular the justice system in the reconciliation and arbitration of land disputes, growing stress on local resources caused by massive displacement in the area, the expansion of artisanal and small-scale mining, which has become a key livelihood for many people in the East, and increased competition between elites for the control over land and consequent land concentration and land grabbing. Now that's quite a lot. Now, from this you can already conclude that the link between land and conflict is a very complicated one. All these factors today explain why in Eastern DRC land is so closely connected to conflict and to violence. The poor governance of land allocation and transfers of land from one owner to another have been a source of structural violence in the entire country. So it's not unique to the east, but it is mainly in the Kivu provinces and in Ituri where it has caused massive violence. And here a context of often contradictory land rights, a weak governance framework, a state hardly existing, a failing justice system, not dealing with land disputes, all these issues have had a considerable impact on the socio-economic and on the legal position of rural populations. And this has led to a growing confusion over who owns the land, who has access to land. Now, in most cases where conflicts arise, disputes and disagreements have remained to the limited to the individual level, between individual farmers, usually about borders. Where does my land stop and where does your land begin? But in certain areas, such as Masisi in North Kivu, in Ituri, and in some parts of South Kivu, in Kalehe for instance, these land issues have become a major source of conflict. And they have pitched different ethnic communities against each other, leading also to the institution and the proliferation of armed groups and of militias. For these armed groups, references to land has become a key ingredient of their mobilization efforts. They refer to land as belonging to the community. Most of these armed groups are connected to a specific identity, to a specific ethnic community, and they refer to land to mobilize the entire community. The one that touches upon our land is a danger for our community. This is how it is explained. But land has also turned into a resource of war, a resource of speculation. During the war, to the advantage of political military elites, new elites emerging around armed forces. And the effects of these dynamics, of course, tend to vary from place to place, depending on the local history, the composition of the population, but also its density, the local governance context, and the administrative organization. But it is mainly because of the involvement of political military elites, for instance, in places such as Kalehe, Masisi, Ituri, that different communities tend to clash and have clashing stakes. Now, usually this land problem is defined as a result of contradictions in the existing legal framework and the lack of a transparent land governance framework. As in many other contexts, access to land, the use of land, is governed in the DRC through a multitude of systems and practices, ranging from customary authorities to state systems, but also armed groups imposing their own structures, their own mechanisms to give access to land. I'm not going into too much detail, but one of the specific actors we should look at, and one of the actors that have played a crucial role in the allocation of land, are the customary chiefs. And today there is an extreme lack of clarity about their exact duties and competences. They have a double status. They are representing the traditional order, but they also, in many cases, are the heads of local administration units. So customary chiefs are extremely powerful and have always played a prominent role in the distribution of land. But the local authority and legitimacy of these customary chiefs has been seriously affected, first of all, by their involvement in the selling of a lot of communal land, often without informing those communities living on these lands, working on that land, but also because of their very dubious position during the war. Some of these customary chiefs, for instance, have supported and still support rebel groups, while others have left their territories and are no longer present. And finally, they have also been extremely involved in local networks of patronage, and land has been an important source for these networks. Now, the Congo Wars have had a devastating impact on a very fragile land governance context, which further exemplifies the negative effects of the existing legal framework. The first impact is the lack of any reliable land regulation or legal protection mechanism for small farmers. Today, a small farmer is no longer protected, has no longer the guarantee that next year he will still be able to work on the land he is working on today. Justice system is playing a very marginal role in resolving land disputes, even if 60 to 80% of all existing disputes are land related. Justice system is extremely fragile, it is affected by corruption, and it is considered an unreliable arbiter by parties in conflict. Now, during the war, land access patterns in those conflict areas in the Kivus and in Ituri have also radically changed as a result of forced displacement. As well as because of the loss of authority of customary chiefs and administrations to the advantage of a new class of political military strongmen. In many areas, it are today rebel leaderships and their allies that decide about who owns who has access to land. And land has also turned into a new source of speculation and of rent-seeking activities, which was facilitated, of course, by the absence of a functioning Congolese state. And this explains today, for instance, why in the Kivus, these political military leaders came to be deeply involved in land-grabbing strategies, either to redistribute land to their supporters or to confiscate ranching land for their own benefit, for their own cattle. In order to consolidate their control over these land transactions, rebel groups also tried to further reduce the power of customary chiefs and create new administrative entities or boundaries and new parallel power structures on which they rely. Now, these armed actors, as I said, often make reference to land issues in their larger power claims because of its mobilizing effect. Land is not only of economic value, it is also directly connected to identity because of the territorialization of identity, which is a historical process. In history, identities have been connected to a specific territory and to specific land. So being part of a community was a condition to have access to land. And this makes land such a strong mobilizing factor in armed mobilization. Now, donors and local organizations, also international organizations, have increasingly recognized these land issues as a key priority. And many of them have piloted activities dealing with these land-related conflicts. Donors today have also acknowledged the importance of land conflicts and the need to develop adapted strategies. Now, this has led to a great variety of perspectives, approaches, and strategies, including small-scale activities founded purely on voluntary effort, as well as sustained and comprehensive large-scale interventions. There are several approaches to deal with land issues, but the most important one are interventions, including initiatives at a local level that respond to specific disputes and focus mostly on community-level mediation and reconciliation. That's by far the most common form of intervention today. Some of the existing mediation mechanisms were implemented to respond to specific events, such as the return of refugees or displaced people, and of course their claims to the land they used to own before they left the area. Most of these mediation mechanisms or mediation committees specialize in land conflict mediation, but also try to tackle a variety of other disputes, with land issues being the most common kind. While many organizations support community-level mediation of land disputes, the majority of disputes treated are those types which are not likely to result to large-scale violence. So many of these initiatives tend to deal with conflicts between individual farmers and not between bigger communities where the risk of large-scale violence is much higher. And of course, these initiatives have a very positive impact on local conditions of land governance. Even if in most cases their impact is limited in scope and in time, these local initiatives provide an essential alternative and respond to a direct need in areas where land governance is weak and justice mechanisms are either corrupt or non-existing. And I think one of the strengths of these local level initiatives is their inclusiveness and their participatory approach, which gives them a significant level of local legitimacy. The population tends to rely on these local mechanisms. The effects of these initiatives can even go beyond land governance issues, as their inclusiveness also provides some opportunities for large-scale reconciliation and peace building. Now, one of the negative issues is that there are too many of these committees today. And all of these committees have their own rationale, their own donor, and their own approach to the issue. Which means that if one mediation mechanism is not giving you the advantage you want to take out of the conflict, you can go to another one. So there is sort of a forum shopping going on today, and people can choose between different mechanisms, between different mediation efforts to deal with their conflict. But I think even more important is that these approaches, even if they are very useful and they respond to a local need for regulation of conflicts and disputes, they have a very limited effect on the underlying causes of these land disputes. And in most cases, these underlying causes are left unaddressed, either because they are considered to be far too complex, far too dangerous, or because of the lack of impact on powerful actors involved in these conflicts. So in other words, these initiatives do not have the capacity to have an impact on those responsible for large-scale conflict. And furthermore, when land-related disputes are affecting large-scale ethnic cohabitation, current initiatives have a very limited impact. So what should we do? How could we tackle this triangle between power, identity, and land? What should be done? Well, a transparent and responsible land governance framework seems to be a very essential ingredient of any comprehensive strategy of conflict resolution and peace building in Eastern DRC. This is easy to say, but very difficult to do, because this strategy needs to address the causes of land conflicts, but also to facilitate a land reform process. But this land reform process will never succeed when it stands on its own. Developing such a strategy without tackling the larger governance crisis of the Congo, and without improving the functioning of state apparatus such as justice, will have very limited effect. Also, other land reform examples in similar contexts in other countries have shown us that such processes usually take much longer than expected, tend often to be very centrally controlled by those in power, and not always tackling the key issues. So what we can take out of other examples is that this is a very difficult process, but a very necessary one. So the real challenge is to assure that policy reform has a real output and real impact. And this, I think, requires the entrenchment of a land policy in a well-designed and effective legal framework, but also a transformation of land policy and the strengthening of the larger governance framework and justice apparatus of the country. To have a longer-term impact in Eastern DRC, it should also be recognized that in addition of this national framework, local realities need to be taken into account, and specific strategies need to be developed, because what is good for one part of the country is not necessarily the best thing to do for another part of the country. And this process, of course, will also challenge people's positions, people's claims, and people's power. Land is a key issue framing the conflict in Eastern DRC. And tackling this will open Pandora's box, exposing a plethora of other issues. But I think it is a critical condition to create some form of stability and thus must be part of any comprehensive approach to the current crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Koen, for this concise yet almost exhaustive overview of these complex issues. Okay. Yes, please. Over to Loochi. We just need to, we don't have enough mic systems to go around for all of us. We need to share them between us.
C'est bon? Bonjour à tous. Le professeur Koen vient de parler assez longuement sur les relations qui existent entre le pouvoir, l'identité et la terre. Et moi, je vais devoir me concentrer beaucoup plus sur les aspects liés à la terre. Bien entendu, il en a aussi parlé. Quand on regarde le conflit en République démocratique du Congo lié à la question foncière, un tableau très simple se dégage. Ce sont les pratiques modernes et ce sont les pratiques coutumières.
Yes, first he said that he is going to focus much more on a land conflict and its relation with power and identity, following up on Koen's presentation. And he's saying that it's a very simple tableau that is developed when looking at land conflict in DRC.
Et ça, c'est un peu une conséquence du développement historique. Alors que les pratiques traditionnelles se sont développées à travers l'histoire des royaumes au Congo, mais également les pratiques modernes liées à la loi sont venues avec la colonisation.
So he is saying that there's a duality of customary and modern law when it comes to land governance, and that's a reality of the historical development where customs have existed before, and then with colonization, modern elements of land legislation came in.
Et le moment le plus difficile, en fait, le moment qui a marqué une grande tournure dans la gestion de la terre au Congo, c'est en 1973. Avec la nouvelle loi sur la gestion de la terre.
The most difficult moment for this problem arose in 1973 when a new land law was adopted.
Donc à partir de 1973, au Congo, personne ne peut être propriétaire de la terre à part l'État, à part le gouvernement congolais.
And according to this land law, no one can actually be own land apart from the state.
Et que donc, si tu construis une maison, tu es propriétaire de l'incorporation, hein, ça veut dire du bâtiment, et non pas du fond qui est la terre.
So if you build a house or a business, then you're just owning the building. You don't own the land that is underneath the building.
Et cette notion a posé beaucoup de problèmes au Congo parce que les premières victimes ont été les communautés.
This has created a lot of problems in Congo, and the most prominent victim of that were the communities.
Alors que les communautés se connaissaient comme les détenteurs de la terre, à partir de 1973, toutes les terres communautaires appartiennent au gouvernement.
So the communities were used to being the owners of their land, but after 73, that was the state.
Et donc ça, c'est la première insécurité dans laquelle se retrouvent les communautés.
So that's the first insecurity that the communities face.
Deuxième insécurité, effectivement, ça c'est au niveau de tout investisseur et au niveau du monde des affaires.
But also another group is facing insecurity, and that's the investors and the business community.
L'accès à une grande concession est lié à un contrat très précaire que le gouvernement vous accorde. Et ce contrat est de 25 ans au maximum.
Every big concession is based on a contract with the state that can only last up to 25 years.
Donc si tu as investi $1 million, il est impossible de te dire au bout de 25 ans, tu peux récupérer les bénéfices, disons $10 millions ou 50 millions, il est impossible de croire que tu vas récupérer les bénéfices de ton investissement.
So after 25 years, you cannot make profit from your investment, even if it was a very high investment.
L'autre dimension de l'insécurité foncière, c'est au niveau de l'usage de la terre.
Another insecurity, the third one, is on the level of land use.
Si tu cultives le haricot ou bien le maïs, l'État considère que tu n'as pas utilisé la terre.
So if you, as a small farmer, cultivate maize or haricot, beans, yes, then this is actually considered by the state, not as a usage of the land.
La seule mise en valeur qui est reconnue, c'est mettre les cultures pérennes. Ça veut dire cultiver le café, cultiver le thé, cultiver le cacao. Ça, c'est une mise en valeur que l'État considère. Donc, ça écarte déjà tous les paysans.
So the only recognized form of using the land is producing commercial goods such as coffee, tea, cocoa, and that already is defavorizing or disadvantaging the small farmers.
L'autre dimension a été touchée par mon prédécesseur, c'est au niveau de l'administration.
The next problem is on the level of land administration. It has already been covered by Professor Koen.
Au départ, lorsque les colonisateurs sont partis, il n'y a pas eu de cadre qui pouvait gérer l'administration foncière.
So after the departure of the colonial masters, there hasn't been any framework for regulating those questions.
Et donc l'administration foncière peut donner un même terrain à 2, 3, 4 personnes en même temps.
So the land administration may give the land to 3, 4, 5 different persons.
Et tout ça, ça fait en sorte que tout le monde se retrouve être perdant. Les paysans, l'État congolais, les investisseurs, tout le monde se retrouve perdant dans ce système.
So because of the system, actually everyone loses, from the small farmers to the big concessionaries.
Et pour comprendre le système, le schéma qui est devant vous essaye un peu d'expliquer comment tout le monde essaye de sortir perdant dans cette affaire.
So this illustration tries to show how the different actors actually lose in this situation.
Donc, les flèches qui sont contenues montrent les relations qui sont très durable.
So the bold flashes that are not interrupted, they are referring to strong relations.
Les autres qui sont barrés représentent les relations qui sont très fragiles.
The other ones with the barriers, and I don't know how to say that in English actually, they are fragile relations.
Voilà. Et les autres qui sont discontinus, c'est carrément, il n'y a pas de contact.
And the black arrow that is discontinued is showing that there's no relation.
Donc, l'administration foncière a de très bonnes relations avec la bourgeoisie urbaine.
So the land administration has a very good relation with the urban bourgeoisie. So the bourgeoisie. I think that's a term I can use.
Les autorités coutumières donnent les terres à la bourgeoisie urbaine.
The customary authorities, they provide the land to the urban bourgeoisie.
Et la bourgeoisie urbaine sécurise directement au niveau de l'administration.
And then the urban bourgeoisie is seeking registration of this land with the land administration.
Et tous les autres maintenant, les paysans, les autorités coutumières, qui développent de mauvaises relations avec l'administration ou avec cette bourgeoisie, et même les autorités coutumières aussi avec les paysans, montrent qu'il y a une fragilité en termes communicationnels et donc les échanges sont très fragiles et très précaires.
The fact that the other relations are not developed in a permanent way or very fragile shows that there's really a problem in the system and in the communication between the different actors.
C'est donc dans ce système que Life and Peace intervient à l'est de la République démocratique du Congo.
And it's in this situation that LPI has designed and is implementing its program in Eastern DRC.
La stratégie de Life and Peace est donc de renforcer les capacités organisationnelles et des connaissances des organisations de la société civile.
One key pillar of that work is that LPI is reinforcing the capacities on organizational and skill level for local civil society organizations.
Life and Peace a 7 partenaires au nord et au sud Kivu.
And we have 7 partners in North and South Kivu.
L'une des approches que nous utilisons est basée sur la recherche-action participative.
The key methodology used with those partners is what we call participatory action research.
Et notre focus est vraiment sur des questions foncières.
And those processes focus on land conflict.
Mais trouver des solutions au niveau local ne suffit pas. Il faut aller à un niveau beaucoup plus élevé pour changer les politiques. D'où nous faisons aussi intervenir le lobbying et le plaidoyer.
So it's not enough to work on that local level with communities. We also need to lift up those experiences to the higher level of decision makers.
Et effectivement, toutes les connaissances qui sont produites par les académiciens, les chercheurs, doivent être capitalisées pour mieux comprendre les dynamiques de conflit et enrichir ainsi la pratique de la transformation de conflit et la théorie.
And we also need to make use of all the knowledge and research and evidence that exists. And we do that in the framework of cross-fertilization of theory and practice.
Ça, c'est l'intervention de Life and Peace. Et dans le cas de figure, nous intervenons à l'est du Congo, à la limite entre le Congo, le Rwanda et le Burundi, qui est vraiment la zone la plus conflictuelle telle que les résultats l'ont montré.
So we intervene in eastern Congo and the region between Rwanda, Burundi and Congo, which are the zones that have just been explained as the most conflict-ridden zones.
Voilà, c'est donc Uvira, Fizi, Calais et Masisi.
So where we have projects is in Fizi, Uvira, Calais and Masisi.
Dans ces zones, on compte pas moins de 32 groupes armés qui sont actifs.
In those areas, we currently count 32 armed groups that are active.
Maintenant, dans tout ce contexte-là, et au-delà de tout le travail que nous faisons, à travers la recherche et action participative, les communautés ont réinventé un autre mode de vie.
So now in this context that we have described, through participatory action research, communities start or have started to reinvent a new way of organizing their life.
Le premier élément, c'est d'essayer de voir comment concilier la légalité aux coutumes.
So the first element that needs to be addressed is to see how can the customary law and the modern law be conciled, be brought together.
Et là, l'exemple le plus frappant, c'est que dans la gestion coutumière des terres, tout s'est fait dans l'oralité.
So there, the most interesting example is that in the customary system, everything is done verbally.
Donc le chef peut te donner une terre et te dire, voici ta limite, ça commence ici, jusque-là. Mais jusque-là, c'est où? La limite.
So the customary chief may give you a piece of land and say, well, it starts here, it goes until there, but it's not clear where that there actually is.
Voilà. De la même manière, les chefs coutumiers, lorsqu'ils donnent les terres des communautés à la bourgeoisie, ils n'informent pas à la communauté que j'ai déjà perçu l'argent pour telle étendue de terre qui représente l'espace de vie des communautés.
And so when also customary chiefs give land to the urban bourgeoisie, they do not necessarily inform the community saying, well, I've actually given that land already to someone.
Et donc, lorsque la bourgeoisie arrive avec l'armée, la police ou avec les groupes armés, c'est de dire tout le monde quitte parce que moi j'ai des papiers de l'administration.
So when they arrive with their registration papers and police, an armed group or the army, then the community has to liberate the land because they have the power and the paper.
Et donc, l'une des solutions issues des échanges et des médiations entre les chefs, les communautés et l'administration foncière est d'introduire dans la gestion locale des terres l'usage de l'écriture.
So in one of the results of mediation between the customary chiefs, the land administration and the communities has been to agree on a system of writing down those agreements that exist with the local community.
C'est déjà une sécurisation assez fragile des droits des paysans ou des communautés locales, mais il faut encore le connecter à toute la dimension de la chaîne d'acquisition des titres légaux.
C'était quoi le dernier? J'ai pas compris. Le dernier élément? Il faut le lier à?
Il faut les lier à la chaîne d'acquisition des titres légaux.
So that is already a first start in securing access for small peasants to land, but it needs to be linked to the chain of acquisition that exists.
Donc aujourd'hui, notre partenaire qui travaille dans Calais expérimente un modèle d'attestation, d'occupation et d'exploitation d'un terrain coutumier.
So today we have one partner that works on this issue, and they are experimenting with a model of attestation.
Et l'installation d'un cadastre coutumier au plus bas niveau de l'administration locale.
And with the forming and installation of a customary cadastre service, so a land regulation service on the very, very local level.
L'autre niveau, je passe au troisième, qui est au-delà de la justice. Le système du judiciaire dans un pays post-conflit reste aussi un moteur générateur de conflits.
So the third level is that we need to go beyond the existing and non-functioning justice system and think about how to repair damage and how to engage in mediation of conflicts.
Donc, au niveau local, nous essayons, les partenaires et les communautés, essayent de promouvoir le mode de médiation autour des conflits fonciers pour réparer tous ces dégâts qui ont été commis dans l'usage de la terre.
So on the local level, one thing that we work with is to support communities in mediation in order to start repairing those relations that have been destroyed over the decades.
Le dernier élément, et là nous avons les cadres des dialogues et des médiations, les cadres de concertation intercommunautaire et tout le reste qui traite ces genres de questions.
So for this, there are committees on local level in Uvira, Fizi and Kalia that deal with those issues.
Mais tout ça, ça reste aussi des pratiques liées à des arrangements entre les gens. Il faut les formaliser.
So all this relates to interpersonal relations and certain arrangements. It needs to be formalized.
Et donc, nous travaillons également avec les partenaires pour promouvoir des lois au niveau local qui tiennent compte des réalités locales.
So that's why we also work with our partners to promote local land legislation that take into account those local realities.
Par exemple, l'accord entre éleveurs et agriculteurs, comment faire en sorte que plus tard ça soit opposable à tous sous forme d'une décision administrative ou d'une loi locale.
So if we think about, for instance, agreements between farmers and pastoralists, then we need to think about a law that would make it accessible to everyone in a region.
Ça, c'est sur les 3 dimensions sur lesquelles nous travaillons. Évidemment, ça, c'est une séance de médiation qui se passe en plein air dans les hauts plateaux de Minembwe, où les gens déterminent les voies de passage et donc pour les bétails et où est-ce qu'on peut faire l'agriculture.
So all of these elements that he has just presented are part of our work. On this photo, we see a local mediation session that happened in the high plateaus of Minembwe, where the people actually decide on the pathways for cattle and the use of agricultural land.
Mais comme je le disais, il ne faut pas les laisser à un niveau très local. Si on les laisse à un niveau très local, ça reste très fragile. Il faut les connecter au niveau des décideurs.
So as he's already said, it does not suffice to keep these things on the local level. We need to link that to the higher political decision-making levels.
Et la grande opportunité, c'est que le gouvernement congolais a entamé un processus de la réforme foncière.
So the opportunity that we see is this land reform process that is currently initiated by the government.
Notre objectif est maintenant de prendre toutes les expériences des communautés, tous les arrangements au niveau local avec les partenaires pour contribuer dans la réforme foncière actuelle.
So our objective now is to use all of those experiences on local level, the arrangements that have been put in place, and insert them into this land reform process on national level.
Et ici, la société civile a un rôle très central à jouer.
And in this process, the local civil society has a very important role to play.
Avec les partenaires et les communautés, nous faisons la promotion d'une approche intégrée qui tienne compte des intérêts de tout le monde.
With our partners and the local communities, we promote an integrated approach that tries to bring together the different interests of the diverse stakeholders.
Donc, connecter les intérêts des communautés,
So to connect the interests of the communities
les intérêts des autres parties prenantes.
with the interests of the other stakeholders.
Quand on parle des autres parties prenantes, ici, il faut comprendre les grands concessionnaires terriens,
So here we mean the big concessionaries,
les entreprises multinationales qui investissent au Congo,
the multilateral corporations investing in Congo.
et évidemment, dans cette approche intégrée, capitaliser tous les résultats des recherches.
And in this approach that is integrated, we should also make best use of the research findings that exist.
Mais les défis restent assez majeurs.
But the challenges in this remain very big.
Ce que vous voyez là, c'est une forme de défi que nous avons.
What you see here is one of the challenges we face,
C'est la présence des groupes armés
and that's the presence of armed groups
qui participent très activement dans les questions de la distribution et de la gestion des terres selon que l'on contrôle une zone.
that are very much implicated in how land is allocated in a particular zone.
Le premier défi, c'est la politisation de la terre. La terre est une question très politique au Congo.
So the first challenge is this politicization of land. Land is very politicized in Congo.
Deuxième élément, ce sont les intérêts des entreprises multinationales.
The second element is the interests of the multilateral corporations.
Les entreprises multinationales qui cherchent de vastes étendues de terres pour les questions de biocarburants, pour les questions minières et tout le reste.
So those multilateral corporations, they look for vast pieces of land in order to grow biofuels, etc.
Comme vous le savez également, le Congo reste la plus grande réserve mondiale de l'oxygène, avec la grande forêt.
And as you also know, the Congo remains one of the biggest reserve of oxygen with its national parks.
Et donc, les aires protégées occupent aussi des très grandes étendues de terre.
So the natural parks that are protected have created very large land pieces.
Ainsi, les communautés restent coincées entre les propriétés des grands concessionnaires et des aires protégées.
So that the local peasants, they are blocked between the big concessionaries that have large pieces of land and the natural parks that are protected.
Et évidemment, l'une des grandes questions aussi sur lesquelles il faut changer, le monde est en train de changer, mais les communautés veulent toujours s'en tenir à des usages coutumiers.
So we also need to see, while the world is changing, the local communities, they are holding on to their customary practices.
Ce qui n'est pas possible parce que les villages sont devenus très hétérogènes.
Which is not possible because the villages, they have become very heterogeneous.
Mais le monde aussi est devenu un village.
And the world has also become a village.
Et donc c'est impossible que par nos propres coutumes, on puisse gérer des espaces aussi convoités que la terre.
So it's impossible to manage those spaces just by referring to our local customs.
Mais changer les us et coutumes, c'est un long processus.
But in order to change our customs, that's taking a long time. It's a long process.
Voilà, je suis en train d'apprendre le suédois et qu'est-ce qu'on dit? Taxo?
Mycket.
Ah, voilà.
Tack så mycket själv, Loochi. Thank you very much for this very rich and illuminating presentation of the local challenges and some efforts to meet them. Now, I'm sure you agree with me. We've been fortunate to have 3 very rich presentations. Now we'll proceed to the next part of the program, a panel discussion. I will pose some questions to our panelists. I may preempt, let's hope not, I may preempt some of your questions, but I'm sure there are plenty of issues to discuss. So don't despair if I touch upon, if I manage to steal one of yours. Let me start with perhaps addressing both Koen and Loochi on the issue of land. Loochi, you mentioned the ongoing land reforms. Could you please elaborate a little bit about what they contain? And then you can perhaps both of you discuss what you see as not only the main features of them, but given the enormous challenges that you both have described, what are the weaknesses of these land reform efforts? What are the chances of success?
C'est une question très difficile.
I know.
La réforme foncière a été entamée entre 2011 et 2012.
The land reform process was embarked upon in 2010 to 2012.
Mais beaucoup plus sur base de pression de l'extérieur que de la propre volonté du gouvernement.
But very much based on external pressure than of real commitment and will from the government.
Donc le cadre global de la réforme a été fixé pendant un atelier qui a été tenu à Kinshasa sous l'égide de l'ONU Habitat.
The global framework for this was defined in a workshop in Kinshasa that was conducted under UN Habitat's leadership.
Et puis, il y a eu quelques décisions qui ont été prises par le gouvernement pour installer une commission de la réforme foncière.
And that then there have been some efforts from the government to install or form a committee that would be tasked with that process.
Encore une fois, cette commission fonctionne grâce à l'aide étrangère, ça veut dire soit de l'ONU Habitat, soit de la coopération suisse ou d'autres donateurs.
Once again, this commission is functioning because of the external support from UN Habitat and also the Swiss cooperation.
La volonté politique reste très faible.
The political will is very, very weak.
Donc, au-delà de ces deux choses, rien ne se passe pour le moment.
Apart from those two elements, nothing is really happening right now.
Mais il y a un débat très intéressant entre académiciens autour de cette réforme.
But there's a very interesting debate among academicians on this reform.
Pour certains, il faut réviser la loi. La loi, elle est bonne, il faut juste la révisiter.
So, some of them think that we should just revise the existing law.
Et c'est moins coûteux d'ailleurs.
And that would be much less expensive.
Pour les autres, ils pensent que c'est tout le système de gestion foncière qui pose problème.
And others think that it's the total system of how land is being managed that is creating the problems.
On est dans un état décentralisé, mais la gestion de la terre n'est pas décentralisée.
And we are going through, or we are in a decentralized state, but the management of the land is not decentralized.
Donc l'une des guerres maintenant, c'est entre révisionnistes et réformistes.
So one of the wars is between the revisionists and reformists, so those that want to revise and those that want to reform.
Voilà. Donc, en termes de défis maintenant, c'est que aujourd'hui, sur le plan politique, en termes de révision, d'abord, le Congo a entamé beaucoup de révisions à la fois.
So one of the challenges is that when it comes to reform of the legislation in general, Congo has done many things at the same time.
Le code minier,
the mineral code,
le code agricole,
the agricultural code,
le code foncier,
the land code,
le code des hydrocarbures.
Comment on dit?
Hydrocarbures pour le pétrole et tout le reste.
So the code of carbons, maybe?
Par exemple. Donc,
Merci,
les provinces aujourd'hui, on avait 11 provinces, on est dans une réforme administrative avec 26 provinces. Donc, c'est beaucoup de réformes en même temps qui sont très coûteux et que le Congo n'a pas le luxe de les réaliser.
So we are in a process of a lot of reforms that should be happening at the same time and that go beyond the means of the Congolese state.
Et en fait, l'autre débat, je vais terminer par là, c'est le débat sur quelle loi a plus de valeur qu'une autre loi.
So another debate is what of those legislations has more value than others, what is superior.
Dans les conditions actuelles, si tu as des droits sur la terre au niveau de la surface, ça va jusqu'à 10 mètres de profondeur.
So right now, when you have the access to the surface, that is until 10 meters deep.
Mais si on découvre le pétrole ou les minéraux en dessous de ta maison, donc tu as moins de droits que celui qui a découvert les minéraux.
But then if oil is discovered under your house, then you have less rights than the one that has discovered the oil.
Et donc, tous ces débats sur quelle loi doit avoir beaucoup plus de poids qu'une autre loi, ça reste des questions.
So based on this, what legislation is actually more powerful, there remain a lot of questions.
Voilà.
So you are saying those two reform efforts of law are contradictory?
Ces deux sont assez contradictoires parce que pour les uns, il faut vraiment aller plus en profondeur. Pour les autres, il faut rester à la surface. Mais il y a des notions qui sont très fondamentales sur lesquelles, si on touche, évidemment, ça doit avoir un impact sur d'autres lois.
So there's this debate about those that say we should just revise it and those that want to go much deeper.
Okay, thank you very much. Koen, please, your take.
Well, I fully... Okay, I need to swallow it. I fully agree with what Loochi said. You know, when you look at Congo and the way it is approached by the donor community, then we see that there's always a dominant narrative. There's always a dominant message. The Congo war used to be about minerals. Then it was followed by increased attention to sexual violence. Congo is the capital of rape in the world. And then all of a sudden, land was discovered as the golden key to solve the problem. Now, we were all quite anxious to see whether this would become the next dominant narrative. The good thing was that in 2011 it mobilized many people, it mobilized many donors to look into this specific part of the conflict and this specific conflict dynamic. There was a national conference launched in Kinshasa which brought together many stakeholders, including civil society. A reform process was announced, at least that conference, that national seminar in Kinshasa announced the creation of a committee and the creation of a framework that would work on this land reform process. Donors have invested a lot of money in it. One of the consequences we saw was that also on a provincial level, people were talking about this issue. People were taking up this opportunity to talk about what they considered as a key priority, land. So you had local committees on a provincial level, civil society groups, development organizations discussing, and then a year later this dynamic disappeared. It's true that there are a number of reform processes going on, mining code, land code and so on, agricultural code and so on, but these happen largely in the margins. They also, in many cases, are seen as very technical processes. When you tackle land in Congo, you tackle power relations. Land reform is not a technical process, it is a political process. Loochi has said that in his presentation. That is very important to know. When you talk about land, you talk about power. You talk about relations between communities, you talk about interests of elites. So if you want to deal with this, you have to have a lot of courage. Now the President Kabila, when he started his second term, in his opening speech, he said that Congo was ready for a land reform process. So he recognized the need for it, but then it went off the political agenda. So one of the challenges is to put the land reform idea back on track, because I think it is disappearing today. The opportunity we had in 2011, 2012 is gone. So that's the first key issue that should be dealt with. Put it again on the agenda, very high on the agenda. But this all said, the Congo crisis cannot be solved with tackling one single issue. So land issues, dealing with land issues might help at a local level, might help at a larger level, but it's not going to solve the crisis. Because you can have a perfect land law. The mining code in Congo is often considered as a very good mining code, but that doesn't change realities on the ground. Why not? Because the governance framework that has to implement these codes is not there. It is run by patronage, by clientelism, by corruption, malfunctioning, what else you want. And as a reality, what is put on paper is never executed. So land reform, yes, but as part of a larger governance reform process.
Thank you. As a political scientist here, I'm inclined to push that further. Always very big and difficult question: who is going to do that? But I'm sure we'll open up the discussion about that. What social and political forces could be identified that would be able and willing to go somewhere along those lines? Perhaps following that train of thought, Stina, you mentioned the upcoming or perhaps upcoming elections and gave us a timetable. In your view, what are the most important features about these elections when it comes to the impact on the conflict? What would be, well, I don't want to trivialize it, but what should we hope for not to happen? What is the thing to avoid?
I think the thing that everyone is afraid of right now is what Kabila will do, because according to the constitution, Kabila can't be re-elected once again. But he hasn't shown very much willingness to step down. So things are really moving, both in Kinshasa, I think, between within the party, who is going to be the next man to step up, and is there someone that can take the Kabila place? But also in the opposition, that last election was very scattered, or they didn't have, like, there wasn't one opposition to vote at, it was many oppositions. So that made the opposition very weak. And right now I think that most people in Congo would agree on that they want to have elections where Kabila can't be re-elected, but it feels very far away. It feels that he will do anything to remain in office as long as possible, and we don't really know what his next move will be, or at least I don't know. Maybe you have better information from the ground. But I think that the most important thing is that there will be election. It's also the first election in the timetable was also local or provincial elections. And there hasn't really been any real local elections in Congo in the two former election periods. It's too expensive, and it has also been really hard to do. So it will be really interesting to see real local elections in Congo, if it's possible, and how that will work. We were talking before this that they are redoing the provinces in Congo right now. According to the constitution, they will become many more. They will become 4 times as many, I think, as they are now, or something. You know, yeah. And that will also change the local dynamics if there will be elections on the local level, on the provincial level. Yes, so I think that many rebel groups, or at least some of the rebel groups that are really small right now, they have tried to start to ally themselves or talk with one another in the Congo. So if Kabila will remain in office, maybe a few of those will really, I don't know, continue their fight or find ways to cooperate against him or against laws that will permit him to stay on. And if the elections will be all right, maybe you can find ways to negotiate disarmament among some of these groups.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add on the elections?
Well, maybe. I think the last few months have been very interesting in Congo. In January, Kabila tried to change the electoral law, and he partly succeeded because part of the parliament already voted. But what happened then was that the population, and mainly students and other people, went into the streets. What was very interesting was that people not only rejected Kabila and those in power, but also rejected the opposition. So you see now, inspired by events in Burkina Faso and in other countries, that there's all sorts of movements appearing in Congo. In Goma, there was a recent incident, that are not connected to the classical organizations, the classical actors that we consider as important in power games. Political parties, civil society, they act very independently, but they express an extreme frustration with the political class, including the opposition parties, including civil society leaders. That's very, very interesting. My guess is that we will not have local elections, that we will have national elections and presidential elections, but maybe, Loochi, you disagree. And one of the arguments that might be used is that it's just too expensive. Now, I think it is also very dangerous to have local elections. I'm not acting against them, but local elections will open again local conflicts which are never local. All these conflicts at the local level, also armed groups, as you said, on a local level, are connected to national actors and are influenced by national actors. So the local is never local in Congo. And also the creation of provinces, the need to vote for, to elect provincial parliaments is going to be a very, very tricky thing to do. So I'm very worried about that. That's one thing. On the other hand, another risk is a complete implosion of the regime. Kabila used to buy in a lot of support within the parliament. That game is over. He no longer has that capacity to do so. Because everyone who puts his money on Kabila knows already that he is a lost case. The question is, who will be the white rabbit coming out of the hat? For the moment, we don't know. But maybe you know, Loochi.
Non, mais ce qui est vrai, c'est que moi, je pense, quand je regarde ce qui s'est passé en 2011 et j'essaie de voir ce qui risque de se passer en 2016, personne n'est pour les élections. Kabila n'est pas pour les élections, l'opposition n'est pas pour les élections. Et donc, il y a un troisième schéma qu'ils sont en train d'explorer pour le moment, c'est de faire précéder avec un dialogue encore politique. Pourquoi je l'ai dit? Parce que chaque fois qu'on prépare les élections, le pouvoir, au lieu de préparer les élections, prépare la fraude.
So he's comparing the elections 2011 to 2016, and he's saying, actually right now, considering that experience, no one is really for the elections, neither the government nor the opposition. And so there is political dialogue happening, and what he says is that preparation of elections in Congo actually means preparation of fraud.
Et l'opposition prépare la contestation.
And the opposition is then preparing to contest the election results.
Ça, c'est la règle chaque fois qu'on organise les élections.
So that's the rule for organizing elections in DRC.
Mais dans le cas d'espèce, la question fondamentale est de se poser effectivement si les élections auront lieu ou pas et quelles élections.
So the question now is which elections are going to take place.
Et je vais juste élaborer sur une dimension, une petite dimension qui a été introduite dans le code électoral actuel et qui est porteur de problèmes.
So he's going to speak briefly about a stipulation in the electoral code that has been introduced now that is problematic.
Moi, je suis congolais, mais je ne sais pas nous sommes à combien.
So Loochi, he's Congolese, but he doesn't know how many Congolese there are.
Et on a introduit la dimension de dire que désormais, les Congolais qui vivent en dehors du pays vont devoir aussi voter.
So they have introduced into the electoral code that also those Congolese living outside of Congo would have the right to vote.
Mais personne ne sait il y a combien de Congolais en dehors. Si on ne sait pas combien de Congolais sont à l'intérieur, on ne sait pas aussi combien de Congolais sont à l'extérieur.
So if we don't know how many Congolese there are within Congo, we don't know either how many are there outside Congo.
Et où est-ce qu'ils vont aller voter? Parce que la plupart des ambassades du Congo ne ressemblent pas à des ambassades.
So and then where are those people are going to vote? The majority of Congolese embassies are fragile, to say the least.
L'expérience de l'ambassade du Congo à Stockholm, c'est que l'ambassade était chassée de la maison et l'ambassadeur a pris à transporter l'ambassade à sa maison.
So the experience of the Congolese embassy in Stockholm is that they were expelled from their offices at some point and had to retreat to an apartment.
Et la loi interdit que les élections puissent se passer dans une maison privée.
The law does not allow for elections to happen in a private space.
Où est-ce que ceux-là vont voter? Donc tout ça, ça va constituer des questions. En fait, le débat majeur, c'est autour de la fiabilisation du fichier électoral.
So one of the big contested questions is how to verify the electoral sheet, or the ballot.
Et personne n'a confiance à ce fichier électoral.
So no one has confidence in this.
C'est la liste. Hein?
So on the electoral list.
Donc, beaucoup de conditions. Les élections en termes d'organisation c'est un beau discours, mais dans la pratique, ça reste quelque chose de très complexe et qui risque de ne pas avoir lieu.
So the organization of elections, it's a nice discourse, Loochi says, but then how that is going to be done in real world and in practice remains a huge question mark.
Thank you very much. It's time to open up to the floor to all of you for a question and answer session. Just before we start, two ground rules. Please state your name and your possible affiliation. And the second one, try to be as brief and concise as possible, please.
Thank you. My name is Bernd Jonsson. I was earlier in the 90s director of the Life and Peace Institute. I have recently been to the Philippines, and I was reminded about the fearless character of the Philippines. When I listened to you talking about the land and power in the RC, I got a question I never thought of before. Could also DRC be characterized as a feudal society? My second question is, when we were talking about the heterogeneous villages, what are the reasons for this? Because traditionally, villages were not heterogeneous. So is it due to refugees, flows of refugees, or so-called natural migration, or what are the reasons?
Thank you. I think we take the questions one at a time, if that's all right. Yeah? So, who wants to start?
Oui,
Yeah?
Ah, ou bien. Tu veux répondre? Oui. Les villages sont hétérogènes parce que, au fil des ans, les peuples se sont mélangés. On est loin du moment où il y avait le village et on était de la même communauté. Maintenant, aujourd'hui, il y a beaucoup de mariages hétérogènes, donc beaucoup de peuples se marient. Beaucoup de gens décident aussi de s'installer là où ils n'étaient pas avant. Et ça fait en sorte que dans plusieurs villages, évidemment, il faut ajouter aussi la donne du déplacement des populations. Aujourd'hui, au Congo, je n'ai pas vraiment les statistiques actualisées, mais au moins plus de 500 000 à 1 million de personnes, 1,4 million, voilà, sont en déplacement à l'intérieur du pays. Donc, tous ces peuples qui se mélangent, qui se marient, autant de dynamiques sociales qui se passent, font en sorte que ça devient impossible d'imaginer qu'une seule coutume peut décider à la place de toutes ces personnes qui se sont ainsi mélangées. Donc ça, c'est un premier facteur. Et ça fait en sorte que le pouvoir des chefs coutumiers diminue au jour le jour. Chaque jour, les chefs coutumiers... Pardon, je parle trop.
Non, c'est bon.
Chaque jour, les chefs coutumiers perdent leur pouvoir. Et donc, qu'est-ce qu'ils représentent encore? La plupart des chefs coutumiers sont utilisés juste à des fins politiques. Quand on a besoin d'un chef coutumier pour jouer un rôle politique, ça on le fait. Mais sur le plan de la gestion administrative et tout le reste, ça pose énormément de problèmes. Ça, c'est un premier aspect. Mais un deuxième aspect... Oui.
So first factors that communities have mixed due to a variety of factors. Marriages is one, then there has been this large amount of 1.4 million of displaced people currently in Congo. That has been going on for some time. Also, people have voluntarily migrated within Congo. So that has created social dynamics of mixing. That means that one custom can't rule for all people in a community. It had also meant that the power of customary chief has been diminished considerably. So that today we can see that their power in actually regulating social affairs has diminished, while they're used for political purposes by other actors.
Donc, je voulais parler de la deuxième dimension, c'est que le pouvoir coutumier lui-même est miné par beaucoup de conflits. Donc, on n'est plus à l'époque où les chefs coutumiers étaient de la lignée pure. Maintenant, les chefs coutumiers, il y a des chefs coutumiers qui sont mariés à des Occidentaux, d'autres qui sont, comme vous le savez aussi, non, je ne sais pas si vous le savez, mais c'est aussi une réalité. Aucun chef coutumier n'a une seule femme. Lorsque tu veux affirmer que tu es chef coutumier, c'est que tu as 2, 3, 4 femmes. Et à la mort de ces chefs coutumiers, ça crée énormément de conflits pour la gestion du village. Et ça fait en sorte que le village souche explose au profit des autres qui sont tout autour, qui ont tendance à récupérer le pouvoir qui est maintenant dans la rue. Et tout ça, ça crée des dynamiques internes assez intenses.
So another dimension for diminishing the customary power is that they are not pure in the sense of ethnic identity either. Often they have several wives, which creates a lot of conflicts once they die infighting within the family. And that vacuum and conflict is often used by others within the community to take power, which then increases conflict.
I'm very glad that Loochi points at these customary conflicts, because it's one of the most important yet most neglected issues today. There's a huge amount of conflicts between customary chiefs, usually between people from the same family, brothers contesting the customary power of the other. Now, these conflicts are not new. They have been going on for for many, many years. But what is happening today is that these conflicts also explain to a large extent the presence and the proliferation of armed groups. Parties within these conflicts connect to armed groups, and other parties also connect to higher levels, to national levels. So these localized conflicts today become extremely important, extremely connected to a large level. And that is what is going on today. When we talk about decentralization, that is increasing these conflicts because the stakes are much higher now. It is all about the right to impose taxes, the right to collect taxes, to rule in certain areas. So these customary conflicts, usually between brothers, because of different mothers and so on, divide entire communities. And this is probably much more important than the proliferation of armed groups as such, because it is inspiring this proliferation of armed groups. But as I said, it is one of these neglected dynamics of the Congolese conflict, yet very, very important one. Is Congo a feudal society? You refer to the Philippines, where we had several land reforms processes, not necessarily with the results that were expected, unfortunately, and usually further excluding people that used to work on haciendas. I think, as Loochi said, the role of customary systems, of customary mechanisms, which were at the basis of land distribution, that is no longer that important as it was before. Land is no longer depending on customary systems. The power of customary chiefs does not depend on the right to distribute land, because of the simple fact that in many areas there is no more land to distribute. But customary chiefs have their power from other sources, no longer from land. So I think that's the main difference today.
Okay, thank you. My name is Wandosan. I'm guest researcher at Nordic Africa Institute. My question is there any relation between the current land grabbing throughout the world, which started around 2008, and the local land grabbing situations? And the other one is on the issue of territoriality. You said that this is also going on. So did you try to see the land conception of the community? Because if you see the agriculturalists and the pastoralists, the way the discourse and the conception of the land is different. Are there, does this lead to another conflict among the community, the way they perceive the land? Thank you.
Let me do the first question. Maybe the second question Loochi can answer. Charlotte will translate. So you refer to this global land grabbing phenomenon that became very visible in 2008 and was very much visible in countries like Mozambique, Tanzania, and so on. I don't think we are talking about the same phenomenon in DRC. One of the main differences is that, of course, there is a land grabbing process going on, but it used to be limited. It's changing a little bit, but it used mainly to be limited to mainly national elites. So it were not the Chinese or the Dutch or other people that needed large tracts of land for biofuels, for flowers, for other crops. That discovered the opportunities in Congo. I think Congo was far too volatile, far too insecure to attract investors in land. It were local elites, political, military elites that were trying to get as much land as possible for cattle or for other economic purposes.
Merci. Et juste pour aller à la deuxième question, la conception elle est vraiment très différente entre les éleveurs et les agriculteurs.
So the conception of land between pastoralists and farmers is very different.
Les agriculteurs, les éleveurs aujourd'hui que nous avons pratiquent l'élevage du temps ancien.
So the pastoralists, they are using, or they are doing cattle herding in the traditional way.
Pour les éleveurs, le monde entier les appartient.
So for them, they see the whole world belonging to them.
Ils ont des milliers, des milliers, des milliers de bétail.
They have thousands and thousands of animals.
Et à chaque saison, ils se déplacent avec ces milliers de bétail, là où ils peuvent encore trouver des pâturages.
So every season, they move with their animals in order to find a pasture.
Ce qui est perçu comme une menace par les agriculteurs qui voient des milliers d'éleveurs venir et donc qui, non seulement ils dévastent leurs champs, mais ils occupent également leur territoire.
So for the farmers, that is perceived as a threat, because not only are they coming with the cattle and sometimes destroying fields, but also they are occupying the territory.
Et nos recherches ont démontré carrément que dans la zone d'Uvira Fizi, ça c'était l'un des éléments les plus déclencheurs de la violence dans la zone.
And the research processes of partners, they have shown that this factor of the seasonal migration has been one of the most explosive conflict issues in Uvira and Fizi territories.
Et donc les groupes armés construisent des revendications autour des intérêts soit des éleveurs, soit des agriculteurs.
And in this context, also armed groups have formed that claim to represent either side of it, so either the farmers or the pastoralists.
Comme aujourd'hui, la plupart des groupes armés n'ont pas de discours politiques.
So that's why a lot of the armed groups today, they don't have a political discourse.
Mais ils ont un discours protecteur de tel ou tel autre groupe socio-économique.
But they say that they are protecting one or the other socio-professional group.
Et donc, carrément, ça c'est la conception. Il y a une bonne publication, nous avons écrit là-dessus, là où la vache et le fusil, et où carrément on peut voir, par exemple, dans la zone d'Uvira et Fizi, comment les différentes communautés qui sont soit éleveurs ou agriculteurs conçoivent la notion de la terre.
So there's an interesting publication that is called La Hula Vache et le Fusil that has looked into this a little bit deeper and that is showing how the different communities perceive land.
En résumé, pour l'éleveur, si tu tues sa vache, autant mieux tuer son fils que tuer sa vache.
Ça, je comprends.
Pour l'éleveur, si tu tues son fils, il peut encore tolérer. Mais si tu tues sa vache, tu n'as pas de chance de vivre.
So for a pastoralist, killing one of his cows is even more serious than killing one of his sons. That's how important the animals are for their identity.
Donc pour lui, la vache doit avoir tous les droits sur les espaces pour sa survie.
So for a pastoralist, the cow has the right or needs to have the right to all the pasture that it needs to survive.
Et pour les agriculteurs, c'est là où on a enterré les ancêtres. Vous n'avez pas le droit de venir, comment est-ce qu'on dit, violer le sanctuaire des ancêtres. Donc pour les agriculteurs, ils considèrent l'arrivée de ces éleveurs comme violer les sanctuaires de ses ancêtres.
So for the farmers to occupy the land that is ancestral, so that has belonged to the group for centuries, is considered as violating the sanctuary of the community.
Voilà.
I am Kristina Lundqvist. I used to work as a communications officer at the Life and Peace Institute. I have 3 brief questions, and I leave it to you whether to answer them all or none, or what you want to do with them. First question is about the elections. Are there any plans whatsoever to involve international observers if these elections come into reality, and would that be useful, helpful at all? My next question is about the country as such. The DRC is a vast country indeed, which we all could see from this map, with the capital city Kinshasa in one sort of distant corner from the eastern area where most of the conflicts are ongoing. To my knowledge, most of the conflicts are ongoing in the eastern part, which we also could see from these spots of numbers of people killed, etc. And my question is it at all an issue on the agenda, which sometimes has been said, to divide the country into two parts? I'm sure there would be a lot of negative, there might be a lot of negative consequences too, but as of now it must be really, really difficult for a government and an administration in a capital city that vary at such a great distance from the hotspot conflict area to govern and to have control, so to say, of the situation there. Third and last question is the recent development in Burundi, where unrest is now developing. How does that affect the situation in DRC? Do they foresee more refugees coming, or is there a risk of spillover of this conflict into the eastern parts of the DRC? Thank you.
Thank you. How do you want to divide that between you?
I can try to say some things. So the first question was about observers. I think that will be a later question. I absolutely think there will be international observers there, but I'm not sure it's going to help a lot if there will be elections. And the second question was about the dividing of the country and the East and the West. And usually when I talk about the conflict, I usually say that infrastructure is also one of the main conflict instigators or something, that the infrastructure is so bad. I'm not sure that is true, but I do think that that if they would develop the infrastructure in Congo a lot, I think that would help a lot, both with creating business opportunities, and that would maybe take young men from the armed groups, and also absolutely tying together the different parts of the country and making it a bit smaller. So I think that infrastructure is a better way of solving it than to divide the country. I think that Congo has been a fairly centralized state, even though it is so vast. Compared to, for example, Philippines, the central power in Congo has a lot to say about who is actually ruling things in this place. So it is a central government. And one of the things with these provinces and the local elections is that, according to the constitution and according to the different peace agreements, they should, or Congo should start to be ruled a bit more decentralized. And this is not as different, countries or different states, but a bit more decentralized. But I'm not really sure that is the solution for this country. It's more, I think, that we more have to find ways of building the entire country and maybe connecting it better. And the third question was about Burundi. And Burundi has been more violent. The youth militia of the CNDD-FDD is doing the same thing as they did before the last election period in Burundi. They seem to kill a lot of opponents. And of course this is affecting Congo, especially since a lot of the opposition live on the Congolese side of the border from Burundi. Probably if things get worse, it will absolutely come refugees to this part. But there were also rumors or truth or anything that both the youth militia were actually training in the Congo late in last year. But the Burundian army and the Congolese army and the Force Intervention Brigade was also fighting the different FNL factions on the Congolese side of the border. So those parts that are bordering Burundi, those are very much affected by what is happening in Burundi.
These are, I think, three very good questions. The first one, will there be observers? Probably yes. But will they make a difference, as Stina said? Last elections in 2011, the international community was very silent about what was going on. And they were happy with the results, I think, because they were not sure about what would be the alternative. Nobody had a lot of trust in Tshisekedi, the main opponent of Kabila. So I hope the international community will be much more vocative in critiquing any fraudulous practices than what was happening in 2011. So electoral observers, yes, but the international community should be more communicative and take a much stronger stance than they did in 2011. Your second question, Jeffrey Herbst, an American political scientist in a very provocative small article 2 years ago, said that there is no such thing as the Congo, and the international community should stop pretending it exists. Of course, that was a huge provocation, and it also showed that Jeffrey Herbst does not know anything about Congo, which he will not like to hear. But it provoked a lot, and it was repeated by other opinion makers in the US. This idea of Balkanization, and Loochi will talk about it later on, has been very strong in some international circles. But the reaction of the Congolese should answer that question. There is no such thing as a wish in specific areas to become independent countries. On the contrary, that doesn't exclude that people want to have more responsibilities at a local level, that some form of decentralization is wished for in Ituri, in Katanga, in Kasai, but people are still Congolese. Your third question, Burundi, there is an impact of the Burundian crisis on Congo already. Stina just mentioned a number of issues. The FNL has been operating in Congo. The Burundian army has entered Congo. Is it going to affect political stability in Congo? No. It will be a very marginal thing, but it will be on a local level a very important issue. So the risk of further destabilization in the Plaine de la Ruzizi, in the Uvira region, that risk is there, but it will not affect political stability in Congo.
Merci, Koen. Moi, je pense que pour ce qui est de diviser le pays, pour que ça soit mieux gouverné, ça risque d'avoir encore plus d'effets négatifs sur la sécurité, non seulement du Congo, mais avec tous les problèmes qui sont déjà vécus dans la partie est de l'Afrique, avec la Somalie. On a essayé, on a divisé en fait le Soudan. On est en train de voir les résultats aujourd'hui du Soudan. Donc je ne pense pas qu'il puisse y avoir des acteurs qui puissent beaucoup plus favoriser la division du Congo. On a essayé déjà en 98, 99, parce que le pays était divisé en 3 parties. Mais là encore, c'était très, très ingouvernable parce que les intérêts allaient au-delà des limites qui étaient fixées par les rébellions. Donc je pense que les stratèges qui auraient ces idées-là auraient vraiment la très très mauvaise idée de créer au centre de l'Afrique une bombe atomique qui risquera d'emporter une bonne partie de l'Afrique. On voit déjà aujourd'hui ce qui se passe en Libye. Donc le fait de fragiliser la Libye ouvre les portes vers tout genre de trafic aujourd'hui et qui est en train d'avoir des impacts en Europe. Et donc au milieu, au Congo, créer cette division, non seulement on aura des républiquettes qui ne vont pas survivre parce que seront très isolées et devront vivre, je ne sais pas comment, mais aussi toute la solidarité. On a parlé ici de la copénétration des cultures et des communautés qui sera très difficile à gérer.
So Loochi is saying on the question of dividing the country in an eastern and western part, in his view that would create many more negative effects. He's referring to experiences in the region with Sudan. Sudan is a recent example of separating a country and the effects that may have. He doesn't currently see that actors would be in favor of such an idea. An experience in the history of the conflict in DRCs in 98-99, when there were 3 parts which did not work out and was not manageable because the interests were going much beyond the territories that were administered. So he's arguing for united Congo, not creating a division in Central Africa.
Et concernant le Burundi, je pense, quand on regarde aujourd'hui sur la carte, le Congo est entouré par 9 pays et la plupart aujourd'hui vont aller aux élections et les présidents sont officiellement fin mandat. Et le Burundi constitue le premier test. Donc le Burundi est le premier sur la liste. Tous les autres présidents ne sont pas en train de se prononcer sur leur 3e mandat. Chacun voudrait voir comment ça va se passer au Burundi. Donc, le Burundi va être un cas de jurisprudence que certains vont essayer de suivre de la même manière que certains opposants essayent de suivre considèrent le cas du Burkina Faso comme un cas de jurisprudence qui peut se répéter dans des autres pays.
Yeah, so he is saying that the DRC is surrounded by 9 countries. For all of them, they are having elections ahead where the sitting president is actually facing an end of mandate. Burundi is the first case in that row. So whatever is going to happen in Burundi is likely to be seen as a precedent to future elections.
Maintenant, en termes d'impact, le premier impact va être sécuritaire, parce que tous les acteurs politiques ont des armées de réserve dans la poche.
On impact, the first level is on security, because all the presidents, they have armies in the pocket.
Des armées, hein? Des réserves. D'une manière très simple, de l'autre côté au Rwanda, il y a au moins, si pas 2000 hommes armés qui peuvent être déployés à n'importe quel moment, n'importe où, par n'importe quel, donc surtout par le pouvoir, par le gouvernement rwandais.
So one example would be Rwanda, where there are 2,000 men armed that can be deployed anywhere at any moment by the government.
Le pouvoir burundais a toute cette milice de jeunes qui sont devenus très très virulents. Je suis passé par là il y a 3 jours et on sent que la tension de ces jeunes-là, c'est une tension très très grande. Et l'impact aujourd'hui, c'est que le Congo est en train d'accueillir des réfugiés, le Rwanda est en train d'accueillir les réfugiés et on n'a pas encore commencé les élections.
And Burundi, there are those youth militias that Stina has also mentioned, and Loochi passed through Bujumbura a couple of days back and he felt this tension. Another aspect is, of course, that refugees already now, before even the elections are taking place, are increasingly entering DRC and Rwanda.
Donc, comme en 94 au Rwanda, le Burundi risque encore d'être le point de départ d'une nouvelle déstabilisation de la zone.
So as in 94, when it was Rwanda, Burundi is, or the case of Burundi, there's a risk that this may be the first stone falling over and creating a lot of destabilization.
Voilà.
Ladies and gentlemen, time is up, unfortunately. Time has passed quickly, and I trust you share my view that this has been a truly educative and stimulating evening. And please join me in giving these speakers a big round of applause.
So I would like to thank all of you on behalf of Life and Peace Institute for coming tonight. When we were planning for the seminar, what we had in mind is to raise awareness about the crisis in Congo, and that Congo is much more than just conflict minerals or sexual-based violence. And land issues, as you could hear, are very central to this crisis. So please spread the word, try to learn a bit more about Congo, and we are happy to assist you in that in any way. Thank you for coming tonight.